Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me again for Friday Morning Coffee. I hope everyone has had a great week. And last week we talked about all of the details and what it entails to actually write an offer on a property. So at this point, your agent has written your offer and sent it off to the listing agent. And now the listing agent is going to present it to the seller, and there will probably be some back and forth negotiating. So one thing to keep in mind is that by law, at least here in the state of Georgia, it is a law that every offer that is written for a property is presented to the seller. So even if somebody comes along and writes an offer for $1 for a house, it has to be presented to the seller. So you know that your offer is going to be presented, and at this point there's likely going to be some negotiating back and forth between you and the seller. It's important to keep in mind that there are other things that we negotiate other than sales price. You have sales price and closing costs, and those are probably the two biggest, but there are also a lot of other terms in the contract that you can negotiate, and everything is negotiable. But I do want to talk a little bit about price, because I have a little strategy that I like to give my buyers, and it's important to think about this before you even get into this negotiating phase, because when you start negotiating, emotions start running very, very high. So it's easy to make a decision that you may not make under other circumstances. So before you get into the negotiating, I like to tell my buyers to think about it like this. Let's figure out where your highest number is. So the way that I like to do that is I say, okay, if you're telling me, okay, let's say the house is listed for $375 and you've told me that your highest offer is $370. So we don't want to buy this house for any more than $370. So that's our highest, our max. So my question for you is, okay, if somebody comes along and buys this house for $371, are you going to be kicking yourself because you didn't go the extra $1,000? And ask yourself that every $1,000, and where is that threshold? Because it's somewhere you're going to come along and you're going to say, okay, you're right. At $373, we would be fine if somebody came along and bought it for $374 or $375. We just don't want to pay that much. So think about it in those terms. Where is your threshold? Where would you be kicking yourself if somebody else got it for a little bit of a higher price than what your highest is? And I always like to have people think about that before we start entering these negotiations, because that's when you have the most level head in this whole situation. So that's just a little negotiating tip. At that point, you're probably going to go back and forth, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe more with the seller before you're officially under contract. And sometimes we end up at a standstill and we're just too far apart and things don't work out. That does happen as well. But hopefully you've gotten through the negotiations and we are under contract. And next week, we're going to talk about what happens next after you are officially under contract with the house. So hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.